Hey, what's up guys, it's your boy Thicknips, and today we're going to see if we can beat Dark Souls 2 only using damage from rings. Now there's only 2 rings in the entire game that can do damage, but luckily you can get them very early in the game. But first I need to prepare a little bit, so I head over here, get crushed by a single one of my testicles, talk to this dude to get this house key to do a little B&E, and head inside so I can get this Estus shard because having lots of healing will be very important in this run. After that I head over here to talk to our old pal Pate, chat with him for a little bit so he won't be wary of my true intentions, and he warns me of some unsavory bandits in the area, which would be his famous last words, as I am that unsavory bandit in the area. I wasn't sure how difficult it would be to kill him, but the mild-mannered in his name is no joke because he gracefully lets me beat the absolute piss out of him within an inch of his life before he starts to retaliate, but by then it was already too late. I pick up his loot and we get the first ring that actually does some damage, being the Ring of Thorns. And with the souls I got from Pate, I made sure to buy the blacksmith key from this lady so she'll move to Majula and sell us infinite life gems later on. The way this ring works is whenever you get hit, there's a 30% chance that it'll shoot out some thorns and hopefully hit the enemies nearby. I tested it out on this hollow, and the first time that it worked really well, and it gave me some confidence that this might not be as bad as I thought because I took like half of his health with one hit. But sadly I can never get it to replicate that much damage again because it always fluctuated between a fraction of that damage to about half. Because whenever the thorns shoot out, it kind of spreads out in multiple directions, so depending on how many you can get to hit your target is how much damage you're gonna do, so it can be pretty inconsistent. But like I said, there's also a second ring that does damage that we could also get pretty much right away. First thing we have to do is confront the Dragon Rider, who unfortunately slips on a banana peel and falls to his death. And after defeating him, I celebrated my victory by looking out into the beautiful ocean and is that a shark on a surfboard? Well, that's convenient because today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN is an app or browser extension that lets you place your computer or phone anywhere in the world so you can get all kinds of benefits that aren't available where you live. Like for some reason, if you wanted to see some British people, then you could hop on over to the UK server and watch the original, much better version of The Office. You could also use it to watch YouTube videos that aren't available in your country and find better deals on tons of stuff online. And if British Netflix still doesn't have the show you're looking for and you decide to download it from some sketchy link, then Surfshark will also protect you from your data and passwords being stolen. And it even comes with an antivirus software to remove any viruses you already have and prevent new ones. And you're able to do all that on unlimited devices with just one account. And they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Also, if you use my code TyTaylor, you can get an extra 4 months completely free. So just click the link in the description and use my code TyTaylor to support me and Surfshark and start enjoying all the benefits that come with it. Thanks guys. And with his souls plus a little extra, I buy the cat ring so we can make our way down to the gutter. Once we reach the bottom, you just need to dodge some suicidal Pittsburgh Steelers, get to the bonfire, and make your way through the entire upper gutter level. Good luck, dipshit. I actually surprised even myself with how fast I was able to get through this. I had no idea what the optimal route was. I just kinda kept running as much as I could until I found the bonfire. And with less than 5 minutes worth of a torch left, I was able to make it to the bonfire in record-breaking time. And from here, we just do a little hop skip down a few more levels, have a mini heart attack from this dog thing, and then plop right on top of my loot. Now that we have the fragrant branch of yore, we could head over to the shaded woods, unpetrify this lady, and give her some clothes so she'll head back to Majula, and we can buy some elemental defense rings from her later, which might come in handy. Then we just need to head over to the vape forest, hug the right wall until we can find the old sun ring. And similar to the thorn ring, it'll sometimes activate when you get hit by enemies, except instead of shooting tiny little itty bitty thorns, it fucking explodes, which is pretty neat in my book. So I tested out the old sun ring on that same enemy from before, and it is much better than the thorn ring. Not only does it seem to activate a lot more often, but it also one-shots him consistently. It does have its drawbacks though, because for one, it has a very short range and you basically need to be dick to dick to get this thing to actually hit the enemy, and every time it does explode, the durability of the ring will go down by quite a bit. So you have very limited uses before it breaks, and you won't get infinite repair powder or a ring to slow down the degradation of equipment for quite a while. Also, I tested the red tearstone ring and it does not seem to affect ring damage. I was doing 327 damage without it, and I was still doing exactly 327 damage even with the ring. After that, I got another Estus shard and this neat helmet and attempted the first boss. And I immediately ran into the problem that most of his attacks will send me flying across the fucking room, so none of my explosions even get close to hitting him. Sometimes he would get hit with a thorn ring, which did a little chunk of damage, but I didn't want to waste all of my life gems on this attempt since I can't buy infinite ones until after I beat him. So I figured I needed some heavier armor so I maybe won't get smacked across the room. I tried to farm these knights to get their armor, but I killed like 15 of them and never got a single piece, so instead I just got a ring that increases your poise. It did not help. So I just said screw it and went for it anyway, and I actually realized that you will not get blasted away if you get directly under his foot when he stomps instead of like off to the side a little bit, which is perfect because you'll hit him with all the thorns and you'll explode directly on his little toesies. Unfortunately, my sun ring did break during the fight and I did not have the foresight to buy some repair powder before this, but I kept on trucking along anyway with just me and my thorn ring and a handful of life gems left. And I was cutting it pretty close, and it was in fact a bona fide cheat clincher, but the thorn ring did come through for me in the end with some big damage.
Holy look at all this damage! And we're gonna repair it using Flex Shot.
Which was just enough to finish him off, but sadly I did not get to emote on him because some goober ran into the room to stop my celebration. And the blacksmith also ruined my celebration because he absolutely bleeds me dry with the cost of repair powder and the cost of repairing my ring, which was going to be over 5,000 souls every single time it needs repaired. So I'm gonna keep track of how much I have to spend on repairing this stupid ring. And while grinding for some souls to buy some life gems, I finally got some gauntlets from these knights and I was ready to face the pursuer. It was an utter failure. Mostly because I severely overestimated the effectiveness of the repair powder, as it turns out it only repairs 20% to rings. So I looked up where I can get more repair powder, and the only way I can get more right now is to farm some rats. So I did just that, and it takes absolutely forever. Probably took me about 30 to 45 minutes just to get 5 of them. So I head back, try again, and it goes much better this time, although it does take forever. Just like the last giant, he can send your body flying across the room, but it is only from one attack where he dashes at you and swipes his sword up in the air, so it's pretty easy to avoid. And you probably don't want to get stabbed by the blue glowy sword attack because it does an ass ton and a half of damage and does not seem to activate your rings. And even with 5 repair powders and like 40 life gems, it still came down to the wire. I had absolutely no life gems left, and I dropped the ball and didn't use my last repair powder soon enough because I foolishly thought that it would repair a completely broken ring, which it does not. So I kinda just had to pray that the Ring of Thorns would stop being an absolutely useless piece of shit for like 5 seconds and finish him off. And it did. This entire fight took about 10 to 15 minutes, and there's basically no ways to increase the damage of these rings, besides a couple things that might possibly work that I'm gonna try later, so I'm really not looking forward to the bosses who have like 10 times as much health as the Pursuer does. At least we get a huge upgrade to our armor so I can stop looking like a medieval homeless man, and I drop another 5 bands to repair this ring. I spend some more money on Vitality so I can wear this armor without fat rolling, and mosey on over to Kunzman Horps so we can fight the Skeleton Lords. Nothing of note happens on the way there, just a bunch of dudes chasing me, trying to reach me about my car's extended warranty, and running around looking for the key to this bonfire and then just giving up and taking the road less traveled by instead. Eventually I do make it there, and dare I say, the old Sun Ring and Thorn Ring combo is the meta for the Skeleton Lords. I was exploding left and right, making epileptics shake in their boots, sending thorns in every direction without a thought in the world because every direction leads to an enemy eventually. I wasn't even wearing the poise ring, but I still had enough to not get staggered by most of the enemies, so I was basically just straight up vibing half the time, just throwing back shots of Estus, crushing life gems without a care in the world. Until these rolling bastards showed up and caused me a little bit of trouble because they like to roll away before I could explode on them, so I just hugged this wall so they had one less direction to go. Which sounds like some super evil, sick and twisted version of One Direction. And despite my best efforts, my ring did break again, so I have to take it to the shop for a third repair. Also, while I was farming for repair powder, my first bundle of rats stopped spawning because I killed them so many times, so I had to go deeper in the trenches, and motherfucking Roy showed up. And of course, he made me break my ring while I'm trying to get items to prevent my ring from breaking. Anyway, now we can face this big old blob thing, and surprisingly, because he is in fact a big old blob thing, the Thorn Ring was actually kind of the GOAT in this fight. Because with such a big blobby target in front of my face, almost every single thorn would hit him for some big damage. And he usually knocks me away when he hits me anyway, so I would usually miss my explosions, but even when I did land them, they usually did less damage than the Thorn Ring. So yeah, this should inspire those of you that feel like a Thorn Ring in an old Sun Ring world that you just gotta find your place in it and figure out what you're good at. My ring broke. After running around for a hot minute, exploding rapidly at times, I make my way to the next boss, and this one was pretty annoying. And it's not that she has an insane amount of health or was just too hard to hit or something, it's just that she loves to heal herself by sitting in the poison surrounding the arena. Which, seeing her heal herself after I spend like 10 minutes trying to get my stupid fucking ring to explode on her is pretty painful. So you basically have to not stay too close to her and try to bait out a certain attack, because one of them, when she lunges at you from a distance, will knock you back, so you won't be able to hit her with the explosions. But the other version, she kinda just pokes and prods at you a few times, which is great because the more times she hits you, the bigger chance that one of your rings will activate. But if you stay too close, she'll either grab you, which will never activate the ring, or she'll back up really far right into the poison to heal. So yeah, this was pretty annoying, but surprisingly my ring did not break, so there's that. After that we get access to Iron Keep, but I am scared of the boss here for multiple reasons, so I decided to go kill the Lost Sinner instead. But first I have to defeat the Flexile Sentry, which is actually very easy if you stand in front of the side with swords, because he hits very fast multiple times, which is perfect for making me explode just all over the damn place. And then I decided to go take out the Dragon Rider, which you might be asking why. Because you get a ring that boosts your damage of counter thrust attacks, and according to some random people on Google, the Ring of Thorns counts as a thrust attack the same way arrows do. Is that true? Shit, I don't know. And I probably won't be able to tell even if it does work because of how inconsistent the damage is with the Ring of Thorns. But I decided to kill him and try it on anyway and go take on the Last Sinner. Holy shit, these guys do a lot of damage, what the hell? Anyways, I decided to fight her in the dark, hoping that she's scared of the dark like I am. And since this is vanilla Dark Souls 2, to get the key to turn the lights on in this place, you would have to kill the gargoyles, which I did not feel like doing. This fight was still pretty easy though. It's not too hard to stay close to her, although every once in a while she will jump away right before I explode, which she rarely does do that, but I swear every time she did do it, it was right before I was about to explode, which was not very nice. And the Ring of Thorns was pretty useless. Is that because I forgot to actually put on that ring that I just got? Maybe. I did manage to beat her in my first attempt, and I got through the fight without my ring breaking, so yay. And this isn't exactly a scientific test, but I did a couple runs with the old Leo ring and a couple without it. And the highest damage I did with the Thorn Ring without the old Leo ring was 138, and with it was like 140 something. And if my math is correct, that is more, so mayhaps it does affect the Thorn Ring. There is one other item that I think might boost my damage, so I head back to Kunstmann Horps to find the key I couldn't find earlier and talk to this fellow who mentioned some guy who had some strange ring or something. Not sure what that's about. I talked to him again in the Shaded Woods, and he says he's going to Brightstone Cove, which is apparently right down the road. He is a big fat liar. Love that movie. To get right down the road, we have to run through a couple areas and face the Scorpioness herself. And I was surprised and or baffled that she's the first boss that really does not take a lot of damage from the explosions or the Thorn Ring, and was pretty damn difficult actually. And as soon as I saw that, I knew I did not bring enough life gems or repair powder for this. I was correct.
Stop it! It's turning me on!
So I got some extra gems, a few more repair powders, and made sure I had some poison moss in case she makes me toxic again. And even with all that, this fight takes absolutely forever. She is certainly the most durable scorpion I have ever faced, because most scorpions die with 1, maybe 2 explosions max, but she takes at least twice that, at least. Thanks to all my poise, I can at least stand in front of her without getting ragdolled left and right, and the only attack you really have to worry about is when she picks you up with her tail, which does suck because it looks very similar to her other attack where she does not pick you up with her tail, but she does knock you back. Luckily you're still close enough for your explosion to hit her tail, so that's pretty neat. And the only attack you don't have to worry about is when she tries to spear you with her tail, because on God, I could not get her to hit me with this attack no matter what. And like most fights so far, it came down to the wire with my healing items and repair powder, but we did get through it. Before I continue, I need to take out a couple other bosses to prepare, and I can't believe that I forgot the Bracing Knuckle ring, because this ring slows slows down the degradation of equipment so you can get some more uses out of the old Sun Ring before it needs some repair powder. I also grabbed the Fire Defense Ring because I'm about to take on the Rotten, and his arena is filled with a bunch of pits of fire that we could actually use to our advantage. Because when you stand in the fire, it does activate your rings, which is pretty convenient. And you could even get it to activate the rings multiple times in a row, and you can get it to explode like 3 or 4 times if you get lucky. But that also means you have to keep a close eye on the ring's health because each explosion brings it down by quite a bit, and it could be really easy to accidentally break it that way. The shitty thing is, it still doesn't do that much damage to him, and the Thorn Ring would actually sometimes do more damage than the old Sun Ring depending on how many thorns I got to hit him, similar to the Blob boss but still not nearly as effective. And even bringing 10 repair powders and the Bracing Knuckle Ring wasn't nearly enough to make it through the entire fight without the old Sun Ring breaking. Not only that, but all my armor also broke, so I ended up having to switch it all out mid-fight. And on top of all that, I ran out of life gems and Estus way too soon and had to look through my inventory mid-fight to see if I had any random healing items. Which I did, 4 of them to be exact, which was somehow exactly enough to get through the rest of the fight with a little over half a health bar left. If you talk to this lady in a third location, she'll give you a Ring of Steel Protection +1, which I think I might start needing with the way the bosses are ramping up in difficulty now. With that in hand, we could head to the old Iron King, which is yet another boss that takes absolutely forever. Luckily, it's not too difficult, but you kind of just have to stand in front of him and bait out one of his slam attacks, but I would avoid anything else because it is very easy to get knocked in the lava here. And both of my rings were actually putting in some work during this fight, since anytime I got hit, it would put me right under his fist, so most of the thorns would usually hit him. And he would usually keep his fist there long enough for the explosion to hit him as well. And like I said, it just takes forever. It was basically the exact same clips you're seeing, but just over and over again for like 20 minutes. So yeah, check out my second channel, Ty Tueler, if you want to watch the entire fight and every other fight for some reason, because I'm going to upload all the full fights on there for your entertainment. Now that that's taken care of, we could head back to what is normally considered to be the easiest boss in the game, but this was genuinely one of the trickiest fights to figure out in the entire run. And that's because these 2 enemies in the room that heal everybody, including themselves, which is quite the pickle when I cannot control how much damage I'm doing. Also, everybody in this room dies pretty quickly, which is actually kind of a problem, because I wanted to keep getting hit to hopefully get a few explosions in a row so I can take out the healers before they heal themselves. But it was just not happening because one explosion would usually take out like half the room. And this fight had me pretty stumped for a while, but after my millionth attempt or so, I read the description of the old Sun Ring again, and I realized that it actually says it has a damage threshold, unlike the Thorn Ring, which just has a chance to go off whenever you get hit. And according to the wiki, the old Sun Ring works a little bit different, and you actually have to take a certain amount of damage and then it has a chance to explode. And it explodes less often the lower the durability on the ring is. So I tried the fight again with weaker armor that just had some good lightning resistance, and I at least felt like it made a huge difference. And it seemed like I was exploding twice as often now. Although it could have just been a placebo, I'm not sure, but I did this fight like 10 or 15 times with my other armor and never really got that close to beating it. But it only took me 2 attempts after I switched my armor to finally beat this fight, and I finally felt a little bit of happiness. Joy maybe, splendor even. And after that we could head straight to the next boss, and this was another one that I struggled with at first, but by the time I finally beat her, I made it look pretty easy, honestly. I think the difference this time was at first I was trying to use the little spiders as a way to activate my Sun Ring, and then I would try to roll into her and explode, but this time I accidentally exploded them all to death, and it was just me and a big ol' spider making intense eye contact. Typical Saturday night with the boys. And the only attack you really have to worry about is when she hits you with her web, because that's when a bunch of little baby spiders will all gang up on you and absolutely fuck you up for being in the wrong hood. But that's when I realized that the Thorn Ring was actually doing a pretty good chunk of damage sometimes, and I didn't really need the little baby spiders. But that doesn't mean you should count the Sun Ring out either, because when the boss starts puking all over you, if you get in the right position, you can hit her with multiple explosions. Although it is a bit tricky because the only part you can damage on her is right on her head, and the explosion is not very big, so you have to get directly in front of her face to hit her. But after defeating her, we finally get access to Drangalang Castle, and after exploding a few fools to open the door, we can talk to this guy who will 1. Sell us a +1 version of the Knuckle Ring, and 2, and much more important, sell us infinite repair powders. So finally, no more farming rats. And with that, we could head to the Twin Dragon Riders, and it's actually not too bad. The blue one goes down pretty quick, and I try to stand in between them to damage them both at the same time. The red boy does have a lot more health and annoyingly knocks me away with a lot of his attacks, except for these two side-to-side swipes, so I try to get up against the wall so I wouldn't be too far away from my explosion to hit them, and I beat them first try. And on the way to the Mirror Knight, I decided to farm these statue guys for their armor because I think it looks pretty neat. And I went into the Champion's Covenant because some people say it raises item discovery and stops enemies from despawning. I have no idea if those things are true or not, but what it definitely does do is make enemies harder. They do more damage and have more health. Anyways, after that I fought the Mirror Knight and was getting my ass beat left and right for a couple hours. And I was like, goddamn, this armor sucks, and switched back to the other armor. And still thought, goddamn, this is so hard, what the hell? And that's when I realized that I made the classic blunder that I'm sure many Dark Souls 2 players have experienced before, and I forgot to leave the Covenant of Champions. So yeah. And needless to say, after I left the Covenant, it became much easier when I wasn't losing half my health with every single hit. He still does have a ton of health though, and it still takes quite a while to beat him. The Thorn Ring was basically useless, and if you happen to be in front of his shield when you explode, it won't do any damage, so you kinda gotta stay behind him the whole time. And when he summons his little goons, I would basically just ignore them and let them beat the shit out of me to activate my ring more often. But if they happen to get caught in the crossfire and die, then hey man, that's just the ugly side of war, I guess. After that, we head to the Shrine of Amana, and it is still ass. I foolishly thought I could just sprint through the entire thing with no issue, but there was issue. Lots of it. I even got the Spell Quartz ring +2 and switched back to my other armor, not only because it has me dripping like a broken faucet, but also it was the highest magic resistance armor I had. It took me like 10 attempts, but I did finally get through, and my reward was a literal nightmare. Because after that section, there's a bunch of mushrooms that start tooting all over the place, and their toot gas doesn't hurt you, but it destroys your equipment very quickly. And on top of that, they don't hit you very often, and there's one big one blocking the path, so you basically have to kill him. So yeah, my ring broke. So instead of crushing life gems, I basically started spamming some repair powders, and the second I would stop doing that, it would break again. I was in quite the pickle for like a good hour. For so long, in fact, that the pickle was now a cucumber and I was red as a tomato. Lots of vegetable metaphors today. I did try to get some other enemies to come in the cave with me so they would hit me more often, but they didn't want to come play, so that didn't work either. So I just had to say fuck it and use my repair powder over and over and over and just pray that they hit me enough times before I run out. And surprisingly, they activated my ring pretty damn often, like almost every single time I got hit. And luckily it only takes about 4 or 5 explosions to kill the big guy, and I scurried the hell out of there as fast as I could. After that, I ran through the Shrine of Amana Part 2B, found some creepy lady sitting alone who says nothing, heals me, doesn't elaborate, and disappears. And now we can fight the Froggy Boy. And I know I've been saying this a lot, but this fight takes forever, but it's not very difficult at least. You basically just have to stand in front of him and wait for him to get out of foreskin mode, and he'll usually do one of 3 attacks. He'll either leap into the air where you need to position yourself to be right in front of his face when he lands, and hopefully activate at least one of the rings because they both do a decent amount of damage because he is a big boy. Or he'll try to grab you, which I would try to avoid, but surprisingly this actually can activate the Thorn Ring, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. And you would think it would do a lot since you're basically surrounded by his entire hand, but whatever. And the final attack he'll do is when he just starts slamming you with his big old lanky arms, which is probably the most dangerous attack, and if your ring doesn't activate on the first hit, I would just get out of there. Because it only takes 2 or 3 hits to kill you, and if your ring activates, you have to be very careful to hit him with it while dodging his arms, because like I said, it only takes 2 or 3 hits to kill you. Other than that, not much else to say, other than the fact that this was probably the longest fight so far, and like many of my fights, I somehow barely had enough life gems to make it through, and actually had to dip into my Radiant Life Gem fund at the very end. And with his foreskin thoroughly stolen, just like mine, we could get access to the Undead Crypt where we can get 2 ring upgrades. One of them being the Ring of Thorns +1 that you can buy from this handsome fella, which doesn't do more damage, but it activates more often, going from 30% to 50% of the time. And there is actually a +2 version of this ring that activates 70% of the time. But it is probably the single hardest ring to get in any Dark Souls game ever made, since you have to invade and kill 1,000 people online as a Dark Spirit, and they have to be different people, so killing the same person more than once doesn't count. So yeah, not going to be getting that one. And then a couple rooms ahead, we can get the Bracing Knuckle Ring +2 off the ground. And after getting the +1 version of the Thorn Ring, we could finally finish Pate's quest from earlier. Normally you would find Pate and his nemesis in this house fighting each other, but I kind of killed him earlier. So he's kind of just chilling in this house by himself, wondering where his old pal Pate went. And if you talk to him while wearing the thorn ring, he'll actually notice it and ask you to give it to him. And you may be shocked to know that I did indeed give it to him, because we still have the +1 version. And after you give it to him, he'll give you a key that goes to this room with a couple chests in it. And one has the engraved gauntlets, which might be one of the only things in the game that I can get to slightly boost my damage, just barely, with a very low chance of it actually happening. Basically, there's a 5% chance that you'll get a critical strike that does 1.5 times damage, which could already be pretty nice, but it also applies to counter damage. So if you have the old Leo ring and the thorn ring and the gauntlets activate, then theoretically, you might do a nice chunk of damage. Or none of that could be true at all, and I'm wasting a ring and armor slot, but I think they look neat regardless. I also decided that now was the time to get some new armor, because I'm about to face Velstadt, who hits very hard and has a ton of defense, and I am very scared. So I head back to the Rotten area to face these two giants, and not gonna lie, I did actually try to do this way earlier in the game, since you can basically do it at the beginning. But at the time I still had to farm for repair powder and had way worse armor and way less health, so it didn't work out. This time was pretty easy though. I just kept tanking their hits and burning through a bunch of life gems. Once they're dead, you get this key and head back up and mistakenly think that you need to drop down this ledge and then get launched into fucking orbit. What you really need to do is head back to the gutter, run around lost for a while, find this door, get totally slimed, and then get our loot. And after I upgraded my armor, I went to face the man himself, and it was just as difficult as I thought it would be. I did wear the engraved gauntlets at first, and I'm pretty sure they actually did work on the old sun ring at least once, because most of the time I was doing like 200 and something damage, but at one point I saw me do 300 and something damage. So I assumed that was the gauntlet, but I kept getting my ass beat and running out of life gems, so I just ended up switching them out for the Havelset gloves so I would get as much defense as possible. And I feel like this fight somewhat came down to RNG, because half the time I would just simply run out of healing items. So I felt that I needed to get really lucky and just have my rings activate a lot and really get the most out of my life gems as possible. Especially once he goes into his second phase, because he gets a lot more defense, so I do about half the damage and he hits about twice as hard. And in the second phase, I really try to stay as close to him as possible because he gets some ranged magic attacks. And if he uses his magic attack, that means you're probably not close enough to hit him with your rings anyway, so you want to be about ball sniffing distance from him for pretty much the entire fight. After that, I quickly made my way to the next boss, which was probably one of the hardest, but it really didn't have to be. He is in fact a dragon, and dragons are known to have wings, so he loves to fly around the arena, avoiding my thorns and explosions like a little bitch. And the only way I could damage him is when he would land and either shoot fire or try to bite me, but 90% of the time he would land, look at me sideways, and then fly right back up into the air, which was pretty annoying. And it was almost impossible to hit him with my sun ring, but luckily if I got right in his mouth when he was shooting fire, a lot of the thorns would hit him and do a decent amount of damage. That is until the very end of the fight when I got near his feet and he stomped on me and I did a lot of damage to him. And that's when I thought, damn, am I like a fucking idiot or something? How did I not think of that? So yeah, this fight probably would have taken like a quarter of the time if I would have just done that strategy instead, but sadly it took me about 15 to 20 minutes of mostly just watching him fly around. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. Anyways, I got the thing and headed to face the last giant, who was surprisingly by far the hardest boss in this entire run. And it's not because he's extremely difficult to fight or anything, but this is the only boss in the entire game, and probably the entire series as far as I know, that has a time limit, which is only 5 minutes. As you can imagine, when you don't really have control over how much damage you're doing, this could be very frustrating. And I ended up running out of time probably about 20 to 30 times before I finally started doing some research on anything that could help me do a little bit more damage or extend the time or something. And that's when I discovered the bright bugs. Something I've literally never heard of this game, even though I beat it like 5 times. But they straight up just make you do 20% more damage and take 20% less damage, but they are expensive as all hell. Regardless, I knew that this was the key to get through the fight because there was a couple times that I got extremely close and just a little bit more damage would have gotten me through it. So I tried again with the bright bugs and failed painfully close the first time. But after, not even kidding, hours and hours of attempting this fight, watching my character get stepped on hundreds of times, I finally managed to do it. I wasn't even happy, I just felt numb inside. Anyways, time for the last couple fights. First up is the Throne Watcher and Defender. And after the Giant Lord fight, this was a piece of cake in comparison. It did take me a couple tries, but as long as you just keep using those life gems, it's not too bad. I would try to damage them both equally because they will heal each other if one of them dies before the other, which is pretty easy since both of my rings are basically AoE attacks. The only trouble I got into is when they would both be beating the absolute piss out of me at the exact same time, and that's when I would just step back, chug some Estus, and get back in the fight. I really wish there was more to say, but there's really not. They don't do that much damage individually, and don't have as much health as you would expect. I did get very lucky at the end because my ring did in fact break once again, but it broke on the explosion that killed them both at the same time, so that was very lucky. Unfortunately, that meant I really didn't stand a chance against the next boss since it starts right away. But the next couple of attempts went much better and I was able to beat her on my 3rd try. And all you really have to do is just stand in front of her, let her hit you with her scythe, and then dodge the next couple of attacks because she can kill you pretty quickly. But unfortunately, she will eventually resummon her spooky curse balls. Oh no. Anyway. It's another long one because she doesn't attack super often, and a lot of the time she'll kind of just stand near her spooky curse balls and shoot spooky curse beams at you like a little bitch. So you kind of just have to wait until she decides to come over to you and take a whack at you with her scythe. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. And a quick shout out to this man right here for being the random comment that was selected from the last video for the Alexander Jar Warrior model. I hope you enjoy it, friend, and if you guys want a chance to get one for yourself, just leave a comment and pray to your god. And have a great rest of your day. Peace.